And I think, so far we seem to be making some waves, especially with the Office of Global Access story. I think, since that story came out that we did jointly with Josh, I think that the ramifications have been quite interesting, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I spoke to, I guess it was about about 3 or 4 months ago. I had dinner with a former. Trying to think how to describe this person. This person was in charge of some things at Joint Special Operations Command. I'll say that. And anyway, when I had dinner with this individual said, You guys have no idea of the shitstorm you caused at the CIA at the Office of Global Access when you guys outed them. And this person was laughing. This person thought it was high time that this whole UAP crash recovery program being run out of the Office of Global Access under the Directorate of Science and Technology, they have continually lied to Congress and lied to the American people, and they're still lying about it. So anyway, this person from that was in JSOC was very. He was glad we did what we did, and it was time to put them out in the light. I would say.
Absolutely, I've heard similar as well. I heard that after that story came out, someone from the intelligence community basically said, "Well, I guess that's it then. The information's coming out. There's no way of stopping this now." But let's see. Time will tell, But obviously, it had an impact, which is what you want from a story. And I'm really, really pleased. If we moved the dial just a little bit forward, then I'm very, very happy.
I totally agree.
The committee concluded that in the 19 years since the first UFO was sighted, there has been no evidence that unidentified flying objects are a threat to our national security.
Chair, now recognize Mr. Burchett from Tennessee.
I was going to follow up with the numerous reports by the Federal Protective Services officers describing suspicious occurrences of UAPs over nuclear facilities.
Let me just say the Defense Department has said there is no evidence of UFOs, etc., or aliens in the United States. However, at those sites, there may be drones that may be nefarious. And so we are definitely looking at that and making sure that our national security sites are protected. We have a whole program related to countering drones that may be coming from
Well, this isn't about drones, and this is prior to drones even. What protocols does the Department of Energy have for reporting and responding to any UAP sightings near nuclear infrastructure? Appreciate you answering that, if there are any protocols.
Well, certainly there are protocols whenever we see anything unusual around our nuclear sites or our national security sites writ large.
Chair recognizes Ms. Luna from Florida.
Secretary Granholm, earlier when Representative Burchett asked you about some UAP stuff, you said that the DoD essentially had denied any existence of that, and you referred to them as drones, correct?
It's my understanding that the Department of Defense has looked at this and issued a report about it.
I have a lot of questions, so just quick and concise if possible. There have been persistent claims and reports, including those from credible whistleblowers to this committee, suggesting that the U.S. government, potentially including the Department of Energy, has been involved in reverse engineering technologies recovered from UAP. For example, the Pentagon's proposed Kona Blue program aimed at reverse engineering such technologies, although it was ultimately not established. Can you clarify whether the Department of Energy has been involved in any such efforts, either historically or currently, to analyze reverse engineering materials from related to UAPs?
I have no knowledge of that.
Okay, there are several reports indicated frequent drone incursions over DOE nuclear facilities, including an incident on April 1st, 2021 at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, also known as LLNL. Can you detail the DOE's current security measures to prevent unauthorized drone activities or UAPs, and what steps are being taken to enhance these measures of frequencies of incidences?
Yeah, we have a whole counter drone effort to make sure that all of our national security sites and our labs are protected from incursions from drones, I'll just say, that are not authorized. So there's a whole series of protocols, probably not ripe for discussion in this public setting
Correct. So I reviewed some unclassified materials from around the 40s and 50s, and so they weren't just being reported as drones back then, and I encourage you to look over those materials because I think that you guys should be upgrading that program to cover down on UAPs. There have been documented sightings of metallic spheres over DOE facilities, if you want to call them drones in this instance, such as one report on April 30th, 2019 over LLNL. What investigations have been conducted in regards to these sightings, and what conclusions do you guys have about the nature and origins of these objects?
I'm happy to follow up with you on that.
Okay, we'll be submitting also too for public record some questions after this, if you could please answer those. Considering the DOE's involvement in nuclear and sensitive research facilities, how does the DOE coordinate with agencies like the Department of Defense and ARROW to investigate UAP sightings?
We obviously are teamed with the Department of Defense because of our national security and nuclear mission.
Are you able to cite any specific investigations or shared data analysis efforts?
I don't have information on that.
Okay. As of right now, again, we'll be submitting some questions for you after this, but I hope that you guys can answer those in a timely fashion. And again, for those that might be tuning into this, I would encourage you to look at some of those unclassified materials, and we'll be happy to provide your office with that. I'll just follow up by one other question, I guess, to close it out. Does the DOE currently work with JSOC in order to handle security measures?
We work with all of the security entities around the federal government. We're part of an overall all-of-government effort on both cyber as well as national security.
Do you guys work with JSOC? Yes or no?
Yes, we do.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, ma'am. I yield the rest of my time.
I think were calling me to help them. Everything was going to be all right. But I was so mesmerized and into it, and Sergeant Allen and Atkins, they're hollering, they're cussing at me, get the hell out of there. Why? Well, I think I think that they were scared, and they didn't want me to get hurt. I don't know. They were real pissed off at me after subsequently. But basically, what happened was after we climbed back up, I think the DOE, Department of Energy people were there. They knew about it, and I don't know why we went there. Still to this day, but anyway, I was arrested. I had all my gear taken from me by men in black camis, had no name tags. They were older men, probably in their late 30s or 40s. How long was I at the site? Probably about 15, 20 minutes. We were the first people on the position, yeah.
Recent drone activity over U.S. military airspace is fueling questions on what's being done to monitor such aircraft. U.S. Air Force officials confirming several unmanned drones flew over Langley Air Force Base in Virginia back in December. It's been brought up at congressional hearings twice just this month alone. In one exchange, Senator Mark Kelly questioned the Joint Chiefs Chairman on why and how these drones got so close to sensitive military airspace. Take a listen.
One of the things we have to continue to work on is to continue to understand the technology that's moving forward and then move at the same pace as it was highlighted. We do have to move faster. And so it's an area that we collectively have to continue to work on, not only here in defense here in the United States, but also at our forward locations where we have many of our service members deployed.
And this issue is the topic of the latest episode of one of our new podcasts. And right now, the link to Reality Check with Ross Coulthart is live. Just take out your phone, scan this QR code right here at the bottom of your screen, or visit News Nation's website or our YouTube page to get that link. But joining me now is Reality Check host and News Nation special correspondent Ross Coulthart. Ross, good to have you this morning. In your latest episode, you interview a witness to the mysterious drones that flew over Langley Air Force Base. Let's take a listen to what he had to say first.
Kind of confirmed to me that it was Langley when I would sometimes see a searchlight that would start flashing from the ground and kind of wave back and forth, never really focusing on any of them as they went past, but just kind of like just waving back and forth. The orbs, I would say looked about car-sized. I mean, just from that distance. And they kept a very steady pace until they got over that location in which they would start hovering over the base.
Yeah, so Ross, the government says they don't know the origin of these drones, but you see that video we played there to the right-hand side of the screen. What's your take on who could be sending drones over U.S. airspace?
Well, firstly, good morning, Marky. The word they're using is drones, but there's no evidence that these are what we would call commercial or military drones. The witness that I interviewed, Jonathan Butner, he was close enough to see for sure whether there were propeller blades or any kind of propulsion system that was keeping these drones hovering in the air. And as he says, this was car-sized. These were large, orange orb objects with no visible means of propulsion. And this isn't just happening at Langley Air Force Base. These incidents are happening all across key military installations and particularly nuclear facilities all across the United States. And I know the Air Force likes to use the euphemism of drones because that offers a palatable possible alternative that it might be a foreign adversary. But there has been no evidence presented of any foreign adversary being able to deploy drones in what at Langley Air Force Base is one of the most sensitive Air Force bases on the East Coast. This is where we've got F-22 Raptors. This is the forward defense for Washington, D.C. This is a very, very important military base, and it's quite clear it's not possible to stop these objects from coming into that very, very sensitive military airspace.
Yeah, I know people have floated the idea of this being, sent from China or Russia, especially after we saw that Chinese spy balloon just last year. This latest episode also talks about how the Mexican drug cartels are using drones over our southern border. Are drones changing the way American enemies are spying on us?
They are. Indeed, they are. I think the estimation from Northcom's commander has been that there's 1,000 drone incursions alone across the southern border of the United States, particularly from crime cartels in Mexico. And the alarming thing is that there are admissions that these drones are technologies far beyond what the United States is capable of producing itself. They're using highly advanced technology, obviously, to bring in illicit materials, perhaps weapons, perhaps drugs, and this is largely unregulated and unmonitored. It's a huge concern, and we interview Congressman Glenn Grothman in the story who talks about this as a major issue of concern. What he also raises is concerns, frankly, that we need to ensure that there's greater reporting of anomalous objects that are seen in our skies so that these things are brought to the attention of authorities, because we have a crazy situation where reporting these objects is so stigmatized that pilots don't feel comfortable about coming forward. And there's a laudatory piece of legislation that the congressman is pushing with his colleagues in the House, which will essentially allow pilots to get protections to know that they can come forward to the FAA and other agencies and know that they're not going to suffer harassment or intimidation in their job for coming forward and telling the truth about what they're seeing.
More than a decade ago, the largest UFO investigation ever funded by the government was based here in southern Nevada. That program continued for a mere 27 months, and when it ended, there was an even more ambitious plan in the works, something code-named Kona Blue.
Documents about the Kona Blue were classified as top secret, but have finally been released by the Pentagon. 8 News Now Chief Investigator George Knapp here live in studio with more on this story.
Well, as you both know, the Department of Defense isn't exactly known for its transparency and honesty when it comes to UFO investigations. So why come clean about Kona Blue? To understand that, we have to explain what led up to Kona Blue and why Las Vegas would have been right there in the thick of it. Be forewarned, you will be exposed to dueling acronyms.
Why isn't it made obvious in any of the documentation that's been made public so far?
It was completely UFO related.
Dr. Jim Lakatsky spent most of his career as an intelligence analyst and missile expert for the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. In 2007, he became interested in reports of UFO activity at certain hotspots, including a Utah property known today as Skinwalker Ranch. Lakatsky designed OSAP, the Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program. He met with Nevada Senator Harry Reid, who helped secure $22 million in black budget funds. The contract was awarded to a subsidiary of Bigelow Aerospace. OSAP became the largest acknowledged UFO investigation in U.S. history, with 50 full-time employees, most of them based in southern Nevada. OSAP created the world's largest UFO data warehouse and produced more than 100 technical papers, though not one page from those reports has been made public by DIA. But Lekatsky and his Las Vegas colleague, Dr. Colm Kelleher, co-authored 2 books about OSAP, reporting as much as Pentagon censors would allow. In one book, Lekatsky revealed that back in 2011, he had informed a U.S. senator and a high-ranking official that, quote, the U.S. was in possession of a craft of unknown origin. The craft had no intakes, exhaust, wings, or control surfaces, no engine, fuel tanks, or fuel. In other words, the U.S. had a flying saucer. Since then, Lekatsky has declined to say more than what the Pentagon authorized.
There was more to it, considerably more to that discussion about what this situation was. We can't go into that.
But the public is now able to read much more between the lines because of the surprise release of a document declassified in February by the Department of Homeland Security. It describes a proposed UFO program codenamed Kona Blue. Not mentioned is that Kona Blue was drawn up by Lekatsky, Kelleher, and some OSAP colleagues as a successor to OSAP, and was intended to not only study but to exploit UFO technology. The papers do not mention UFOs, but there are plenty of clues. The purpose of Kona Blue was to, quote, identify potentially disruptive technologies by analyzing material of unique origin and engineering. Success would depend on gaining access to said materials. Kona Blue would establish a system to collect sightings of such technology, including at locations where there are frequent reports. There are references to advanced technology that's already been recovered. One section notes this recovered technology exists only within special access programs. Kona Blue would have created a medical division to study physical and psychological effects on humans from encounters with advanced aerial vehicles. And there's this chilling note that Kona Blue experts would, quote, handle and examine unusual and unique biological specimens. What might those be? Like OSAP, Kona Blue would have been based in Las Vegas. The document notes that buildings already cleared to handle top-secret material were standing by. But in 2009, when Nevada Senator Harry Reid wrote to the Department of Defense to ask for a special classification for the DIA program, alarm bells were set off in Washington, opposition mounted, and the program's budget was pilfered. That's why in 2011, Lekatsky, Kelleher, and others tried to find another home for what they called Kona Blue. The document showed the Department of Homeland Security was briefed about what OSAP had learned. Deputy Secretary for Science and Technology, Dr. Tara O'Toole, was impressed enough to sign off on Kona Blue. But as with OSAP, when top officials began knocking on doors to ask for access to special materials stashed in secret cubbyholes, opposition to Kona Blue quickly mobilized, and the proposed program was stopped dead. To date, Dr. Lekatsky carefully measures his words when asked about the special materials they tried to access.
There's material and there's material. Are you talking about material to be investigated? In other words, pieces falling off flying saucers? Or are you talking about full-blown craft? You know, there's the big difference.
Oh, yeah. Kona Blue was declassified by AARO, which is the current UFO program, as a way to discredit evidence and testimony provided by witnesses and whistleblowers. The former head of AARO, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, says the people who came forward to tell about crash saucers were all referring to Kona Blue. Of course, that is preposterous. Kona Blue never existed, and only a handful of people even knew it was proposed. So what witness says they saw crash saucers as part of Kona Blue? AARO says there are no crash saucer programs, but they will not release the testimony they received. Also, as a personal note, Dr. Lekatsky and Dr. Kelleher wrote those 2 books we mentioned in that story. I was also a contributor. They sent me out for coffee, things like that.
So, George, if any reporter knows about this topic, it's you. You also have to maintain your sources. Is this one of those things you knew about but maybe couldn't say anything?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I was aware of this proposed program. We included a detailed description of it in one of those events, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, that came out in 2019. But the code name was classified, so I didn't know about that because I do not have a security clearance. So, you know, some things they keep back even from me.
Thanks so much.
Blue have anything to do with the program David Grush says exists? News Nation's Joe Khalil is here now with more. Joe, there is a tiny credibility question here. The Pentagon has been saying for the past year there was never any such reverse engineering program. Now it says, oh, there was one, but it never really got started.
Yeah, I mean, there were rumors about this program, the code name Kona Blue, for a long time now. And it was only last month that they acknowledged for the first time ever that it existed. Now we are getting an inside look at how this program was propped up. So it's called Kona Blue. It is real. It was a special access program, very highly classified. It was proposed from the Pentagon to the Department of Homeland Security. We now have all of these declassified documents, and in them, it describes the purpose of the program as, and I'm going to quote here, acquiring, studying, and engineering technology that the U.S. got from UAPs or UFOs. In the documents, it refers to them as AAVs, Advanced Aerospace Vehicles. Ultimately, the program was scrapped by the Department of Homeland Security, but not before years of planning went into it from the Pentagon, and it describes in detail how they stood the program up. They set a budget, $12 million to $15 million the first year, going all the way up to $50 million down the road. And the program in these documents now also makes specific reference to locations in Nevada where some material may be housed. It also references recovered UAP material, personnel with knowledge of recovered technology, and also personnel who know of the whereabouts of this. And just lastly, if you think this sounds too sci-fi or that this was maybe one or two rogue employees at the Pentagon, in these documents it also shows that the Undersecretary of Science and Technology signed off on this program and approved it, saying in these documents that it was a necessary step for national security. So all of that is in here now. We did get a response from the Department of Homeland Security today, and they said simply, quote, while this program was considered under a prior administration, it was never fully established by the Department of Homeland Security. DHS has released these classified documents consistent with its commitment to transparency. So, Elizabeth, it looks like we now have some very clear specifics about what was in this, at least proposal, for this plan from the Pentagon.
Wait, you mentioned some budget figures there in the tens of millions of dollars. Was that money ever spent? Was money ever spent on Blue Kona?
I don't believe the money was spent. The money was effectively sort of earmarked within the DoD's budget or the Pentagon's budget, but the program, to my understanding, was scrapped before that money was spent because it was allocated specifically for year one, year two, year three, and year three being an expectation for what they would need at that point.
And what do we make of the fact that they keep talking about locations in Nevada and material being housed in Nevada? What is that a reference to?
Yeah, that was really interesting. So it was referencing locations where the program was scoping out for if they had recovered these types of material or pieces of a recovered vehicle, where they may be housed, where they may be kept. They were bringing on a scientific team to study and do that kind of thing. So they were literally already scoping out locations where that type of work was going to happen. And it's all laid out there in these now declassified documents, right in black and white.
All right, Joe Khalil reporting live from Capitol Hill.
Legacy program Gatekeepers have been advising Kirkpatrick, and we were one of the first people to reveal this months back, that Kirkpatrick had people that were actually managing or had been managing the legacy UFO crash retrieval and back in engineering program, that he had brought those people on board to advise them. I think we've kind of seen the result of that. And I understand earlier that you posted that you actually know the names of these people. Do you plan on revealing them?
Yes, actually, I forgot it was you that had that scoop, Matt. It was you. It was the advisory group to Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick that he was keeping very, very secret. But there were, again, people in Arrow who were quite alarmed to discover that their boss, the head of Arrow, was taking advice from a group of advisors who, frankly, were totally and utterly compromised. And I can't name them just yet. I've got plans about what I want to do. But what I can tell you is that these are people whom I know are directly involved as legacy program gatekeepers. One of them sat on the National Security Council with Dick Cheney in his White House years. It's very, very interesting to see the people who are now being revealed to me as the people involved in, frankly, this cover-up. And yes, they are going to be named. They are going to be revealed. There is going to be an unveiling of who these people are in my own good time. We're talking to people from the National Air and Space Intelligence Centre. We're talking to people from the DIA. You guys, we know exactly who you are. I know your names. And sooner or later, we're going to name you. And you're going to be identified as people who are involved in criminal activities against the American public. And frankly, if the rest of the mainstream media doesn't cover it, I'm happy. Because frankly, there is a multi-million audience out there that is responding.